Bible lessons daily. Ancient truth for modern life.
Snuggle deep under your blankets and think about your favorite shiny thing. Maybe it's a smooth glass marble, a polished stone, or a brand new coin. We love how shiny things catch the light. A long time ago, there lived a man named Alexander who spent his days surrounded by copper, a shiny reddish metal. He wasn't a king or a soldier, but his arms were as thick as ropes from hammering that metal into brilliant bowls and flickering lamps. His forehead was always scrunched up in deep focus. Alexander had a young helper named Eli, a boy who always looked a little nervous. Alexander demanded absolute perfection in his shop. He would shout at Eli to make sure every single pot was flawless. To Alexander, perfect work mattered because it brought him what he loved most, a heavy pouch of jingling coins from his customers. Alexander loved the warm glow of his copper, and he loved the crisp clink of his money. He spent so much time chasing those two things that he forgot how to care for the people around him. He valued his shiny metal far more than his friends. If you walked past his shop, you wouldn't hear laughter or friendly chatter. You would hear a harsh, deafening sound echoing out of the dark smoke. Clang, clang, clang. Copper is tough. It doesn't want to bend. To force it into a shape, you have to hold it in a roaring fire until it glows bright orange, and then you have to strike it over and over with brutal, heavy force. People would travel for miles to buy the beautiful, gleaming pots he placed in his shop window. But inside the workshop, behind the shiny display, the air was choking with smoke. The room was dark, and the feeling was entirely cold. Spending every day using violent force on unyielding metal began to rub off on Alexander. By ignoring love and kindness, his own heart grew as cold and hard as the copper sitting on his anvil. One morning, a completely different sound floated through the sunlit town square. It wasn't the harsh crash of metal. It was a human voice, strong, warm, and kind. It belonged to a traveler named Paul. Paul had a difficult past. He used to go by the name Saul, and during those older days, he did terrible, mean things to people. He had caused a lot of pain, but Jesus completely changed him. He spoke of a forgiveness that washes hearts cleaner than water. All the anger and cruelty was washed away, making him someone who was gentle, moldable, and full of love. Paul started teaching the townspeople about a love bigger than the sky. People listened, and they began to change too. They started sharing fresh bread with hungry strangers and fixing broken carts for the elderly. Even Eli, the nervous helper, started humming quiet songs of joy while he polished the bowls. Paul told them that the greatest treasure in the world isn't made of shiny metal, and it can't be bought with heavy coins. The real treasure is a soft heart, shaped by kindness. Alexander noticed the humming. He noticed his customers were spending more time talking about Paul's teachings than buying his kettles. Deep inside his chest, a hot, prickly feeling began to bubble up. He was intensely jealous. One afternoon, the heavy workshop door creaked open. Paul stood at the entrance. In his hands, he held a cheap, plain traveler's cup with a small dent on the side. He smiled warmly and asked the master coppersmith if he might please mend it for him. Alexander looked at the cheap little cup and then at his own gleaming, expensive platters. He sniffed the air in disgust. With a cold voice, he told Paul he was far too busy and to take the cup to the man who fixes pots down the road. Paul didn't get angry. He looked at Alexander with deep sadness. He spoke softly, warning the coppersmith to be very careful. He asked him not to let his own heart become harder than the metal he worked with every day. "My heart is fine," Alexander roared. He demanded that Paul leave his shop immediately if he wasn't there to spend money. In that single moment, Alexander made his choice. A man walked in needing a simple favor, and Alexander chose his pride. He locked his doors to kindness, leaving his heart sealed tight. A few days later, Eli was working under Alexander's heavy, angry glare. His hands were shaking. He tripped over his own feet, and with a terrible crash, a brand new, perfectly polished copper vase hit the stone floor. The rim was bent ugly and ruined. Alexander didn't yell. Instead, he spoke with an icy, terrifying quietness. He pointed to the door, fired Eli on the spot, and told the boy to never come back. Eli ran out into the street, tears streaking his cheeks. The heavy wooden door closed behind him. Inside the workshop, there was dead silence. That night, the fire in the forge died down to cold ashes. Alexander sat alone in the dim moonlight. Tap, tap, tap. He tried to hammer the dent out of the broken vase, but the metal was ruined. The dent stayed. He looked around his shop. Rows and rows of perfect, shiny copper lined his shelves. But the shiny metal couldn't talk to him. It couldn't comfort him. He had perfectly polished objects, but he was completely, entirely alone. We know this story is true because Paul actually wrote about it in the Bible. He wrote a letter explaining that Alexander the Coppersmith hurt him very deeply. Alexander didn't throw stones at Paul, but he hurt him with his words and with a heart that had turned cold and hard. Sometimes it's the things we say to people that hurts even more than the things we do. Jesus asks us to love one another always, and to remember that the people around us are vastly more valuable than the things we own. So tonight, as you close your eyes, you can ask God for a special kind of strength. Ask Him to keep your heart soft, like warm clay, so it can be shaped by love. And ask Him to help you care deeply for people, instead of just shiny things. Because a gentle, loving heart is the only real treasure we have. It's the only thing that keeps us connected to each other. Good night, little lights. Sleep warm and sleep soft.
What lesson spoke to your heart today? Tell us in the comments, and subscribe for daily Bible wisdom.